chapter 6. If you have your Bibles, you'd like to turn to 1 Timothy chapter 6. Paul writes a letter to Timothy, who's a young man that he's watched and kind of mentored, who is serving in the church in Ephesus. And Paul has influenced his life. He's been an influence on his life. If you were to start at the first chapter, you'd find out, Paul knows his grandmother, and Paul knows his mom, and he recalls those things. But he is at a very important place as he ends this book. And church is really important. I don't know if you guys realize it or not, but church is important. Each and every week we come into this place, and as I open this book and as we read from its pages, we're reminded of some truths that we ought to hear. This book teaches us things that we ought to hear. Now, sometimes we're a little uncomfortable with the things that it tells us to do. But I don't know, maybe you remember in James where it says, anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and after looking at himself goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. So, James, as he's writing, says, don't just listen to the word, do what it says. And then as it goes on to verse 25, says, but whoever looks intently into the perfect law. And now, again, I hold up this book. Whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, they will be blessed in what they do. We need to stay in this book, and we need to be intent as we look through this book. This book has lessons for us every week as we come. I don't know, the people in Ephesus were a lot like our culture today. They had a lot of stuff. They were very blessed. And Paul writes to them, and he's trying to get them to understand how blessed and how fortunate they are. Now, we're like that a lot too. I mean, we are very selfish. We are self-centered. We can do it ourselves. We can handle this ourselves, and we're taught to handle things on your own. Do it. You can do it. Get up and do it yourself, son. But we need to realize that God is always there. Here's a picture. We live in a me generation. Every day, 90 million selfies are taken. 90 million selfies are taken. I got that phone, or it's here in my pocket, and you just flip it out and boom, boom, take a picture, and people are taking. Google estimates that last year 25 billion selfies were uploaded just to their Google site. And selfies are a rather new thing. Some of you. I don't know if you know exactly how to do a selfie or anything. But anyway, with our phone, we are taking pictures constantly. Pictures of ourselves. We're so self-centered about things in life. There's a whole category of selfies. It's called selfies gone wrong. Selfies gone wrong. You laugh. Well, there are people that have gone out and shoplifted and taken a picture of themselves stealing and posted the picture. And then the cops come and take them away, as you would say. Some don't get it, I guess. But there are people. There was a guy that I was reading about that he called into work and he said, I got a big family problem. I'm not going to be able to be there today. But anyway, I'm hoping the next day or two I'll get back. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow. But I got a big family problem. Well, he took a selfie of himself drinking with a bunch of friends somewhere, posted it. Yeah, his boss happened to see the picture and said, texted him, need to see you in my office tomorrow. Well, those are selfies gone wrong. But this is kind of a cute picture that you see behind me of a couple of girls that are friends probably taking a picture. But I mean, there are a whole other group of selfies that are selfies that have ended in death. like the most dangerous thing that I could do, and I wanted to take a picture of me hanging off the edge of this building. It was one of the ones that I looked at. Actually, there are 55 people that die every year taking this perfect selfie. 55. You're actually, we live in a country where you're more apt to die by taking a selfie than to be eaten by a shark. Now, I don't know. Anyway, we're kind of crazy, aren't we? Okay, now, here's Paul, and he's writing this. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. And Paul is challenging the Christians not to let money or wealth or things, the self stuff, help them develop a spirit of arrogance and a spirit of pride. Paul is saying, make sure you tell the people in the church they shouldn't think they are worth more because maybe they have a little more. And then he goes on in verse 18 and says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. And there are lots of warnings in the Bible about pride and about arrogance. Here's one maybe you've heard. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. Or the Message translation says, first pride, then the crash. It can occur with our finances, and it can occur with our relationships. It can occur in whatever areas of life. We think, oh, we got this totally under control. We got this under control. And then boom. Here's another proverb, and it says, for there are 6 things the Lord hates, no 7. And the first one is haughtiness, which is arrogance or pride. Actually, the King James Version says a proud look, a proud look. For there are 6 things the Lord hates, no 7. Haughtiness, lying, murdering, plotting evil, eagerness to do wrong, a false witness, sowing discord among brothers, stirring up trouble. But why is pride, this haughtiness, why is this listed first? Murder's pretty bad. Lying, that's not good. Well, it's because pride is the root of many of the sins that we commit. Pride is the root in a murder that is committed. Pride is the root in a lie that is told. Pride makes it difficult for us to see the real truth, to see the reality. And this whole sermon series, Get Over Yourself, I don't know, you may be thinking someone needs to hear this sermon. Boy, I wish they were here. It's like, I don't need this. I got pride. It's pride that may be even telling you that. So as I start into this sermon, the first point I want to share with you is 6 ways to know you need to get over yourself. Well, one is you have a tendency to take everything personally. No, I don't do that. I don't take everything personally. Well, take it easy. Take it easy for a minute. You have a tendency to kind of put up a case for yourself. Someone asks you a question or makes a suggestion, and you see it as an indictment against you. Or you walk in and you see 2 of your friends, and they're talking to each other, and you think immediately they're talking about me. There's a Christian book that's written about the life of Jesus, and it's called Unoffendable. And it says these things about Jesus. He didn't feel like he had to justify everything he said. Just studying through the Gospels, this writer says if anybody made a false accusation against him, he didn't feel like he needed to correct everything that he was accused of. He didn't feel like everybody had to agree with him. He could be around all kinds of different people. He would eat with sinners because he was comfortable being around people who might have seen things differently than he saw or differently than he thought. And he was right. He was always right. If he said it, it was right. But it didn't bother him to be around people that didn't see it just like he did, even though he was always right. He knew who he was, and he had nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. This is a quality of humility. Being easily offended is a root of pride. We can't get over ourselves. We can't get over we can't stand it if somebody disrespects us. We can't stand being misunderstood. Well, here's another way that you need to get over yourself, is that you think your feelings are the most reasonable things and the most reasonable thoughts. You expect other people to recognize that your thoughts on any given subject, they just make the most sense, right? We just know what we're talking about. I was reading about a survey that was done of a group of people who were members of a dating website. Thousands of members were asked on this dating website, "Are you a genius? Would you consider yourself to be a genius? Yes or no?" Now, in this survey of the thousands of people that were surveyed, 2 out of every 5 of the men said they were geniuses. 2 out of every 5 said they were geniuses. Well, kind of the article went on to say, it's really like 1 in 1,000 men. Like for 1,000 men, maybe 1 out of 1,000. But what it said was 40% of all men think they're 1 out of 1,000. So anyway, you think my thoughts are the most reliable. Proverbs 13:10 says, "Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice." If you see problems going on, there's strife, and it's because there's pride that's in the middle of a fight or something that's happening. But wisdom is found in those who are willing to listen to advice, that are willing to hear others' opinions. Here's another way that you can know if you need to get over yourself. You think your feelings are the most reasonable. I don't know, you're with a car full of people and it's time to go eat after church. You think it's got to be where I want to go. I mean, it's just the most reasonable place to go because I'm the one that thinks this, and my feelings are the most reasonable feelings. Here's a verse in Philippians says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather in humility value others above yourselves." We need to value others above ourselves. I don't know. Here's another one. 6 ways to get over you need to get over yourself. You always think the other person needs to apologize or change. Rarely do people come by the church and say, "Hey, Larry, I think we're neglecting the poor people," or "Larry, I think we're really not reaching out to this group of people. We need to get out and reach out to this group." A lot of times when people come by, what they want to make sure is that we realize that they're upset about something, and they want us to know what they're upset about. And our desire is the most important desire, and you always think the other person needs to apologize or change. Jesus warned us about this. Matthew 7, verse 3 says, "Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank, the 2x4 that's coming out of your own eye? How can you say to your brother, 'Let me get that little splinter out of your eye,' when all the time there is a plank in your own eye?" So often we justify broken relationships or conflict or issues by saying, "Well, if they wouldn't have done this, then I wouldn't have had to do this." Instead of saying, "I should have just never reacted. I was wrong to do that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that." Instinctively, we try to blame the other person. Another thought is you always think the other person needs to change or apologize. I think I've repeated myself, but that's all right. Anyway, I was in a hurry putting this stuff together. But I don't know. Some of you have experienced this. Your negativity has alienated people in your life from you. You feel like no matter what they try to do, whatever you try to do for them, it's just not enough. Maybe it's a son-in-law, maybe it's a daughter-in-law that just has learned to just stay out of your way because they can't do what's right no matter what they do. They'd rather just kind of avoid you than to be around you because you're just not good. You're just not good enough for them. The language of arrogance is complaining and criticizing. The language of arrogance is complaining and criticizing. The language of humility is gratitude and encouragement. You tend to be negative and critical instead of positive and grateful. If we go through this list and you keep going, you think, I don't know, I'm so glad that my spouse came today because they need to get over themselves. Or I'm so glad I got this friend that I need to get to listen to this sermon on the online stuff or on the radio because they need to get over themselves. Well, you tend to be negative and critical instead of positive and grateful. Obadiah, verse 3 says, "The pride of your heart has deceived you. You who live in the clefts of the rocks and make your home on the heights. You who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground?" Well, you'll go down to the ground, I promise. But it just says, the pride of your heart has deceived you. Realize this about all of us and about ourselves, is that pride can be a problem that really gets in the way. And so in 1 Timothy 6, Paul is going to speak specifically to the people who are proud, to the people who are arrogant, to the people who think they're cool because I guess they got a lot of stuff or whatever. And he says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command those who are rich. You probably say, well, Larry, this isn't talking to me. I'm not rich. And I know, there may be circumstances, situations where you are down really pretty bad off on your luck or different things. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe there's things that are going on and you're wondering about things. But when he says command those that are rich, we think that's somebody else. I read an article and I just share it with you. It says, imagine that the entire population of the whole planet, that's like 7 billion people, is represented just by 100 people. Well, of those 100 people, of the 7 billion plus, 70% of them wouldn't know who Jesus is, or 30% of them would. Well, 51% of those 100 would be women, and 49 would be men. They say there's somebody for everybody, but anyway, statistics probably don't say it. And after I told that story about guys a while ago, anyway, I understand, ladies. But anyway, so the entire population of the world is 100 people. 85 of those people live in substandard housing. 85 of those people do not have electricity, nor do they have water. Of the 7 billion, 85% of the people that live in this world don't have electricity or water. 80 of those 100 people are hungry. They're not starving to death, but they're malnourished, and they, nutrition-wise, they need some more than they're getting. 6 of those 100 people, they would come from the country that we call the United States of America. And those 6 people would own half of the world's money and goods. So 6% of the world owns half of everything that is owned in our world. Now, I don't know, maybe you can't pay your bills, maybe you're looking for a job and you can't find one, and I understand you might not feel this way, but I am telling you, if you live in America, you are well off. You are very well off. I think it's, if you make $34,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the world, okay? If your family makes that much money, then you're in the top 1%. Oh, anyway, why do you need to get over yourself? Well, realize that money is so uncertain. Money is here today and it's gone tomorrow. You're valuing yourself, or maybe you value other people based upon other people's worth, based upon what they have, what their net worth is. And Paul is saying, why in the world would you do that? That's ridiculous. That's crazy. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. In the scheme of eternity, money and stuff is going to make very little difference. We look to resources to satisfy us, to offer, security or significance. And when we start to value people by the things that they have, and that's just crazy. We have a tendency to idolize the rich and the famous and the celebrity. This is it's about a 10-year-old Honda Accord. I was reading about a young couple on the West Coast. He's a youth pastor at a church. And he was coming to, him and his wife were meeting with a minister, and they were talking about, she said, I don't know what to say, but we just don't get along with my family at all. My parents, they didn't bless our marriage. Last couple of years, they've given us the silent treatment, and I just don't know what to do. There's a little girl said about her mom and her dad. And the preacher was like, I wonder if there's something going on. He said, well, is your husband, is he like struggle with addiction in his life? Or is he trying to control or manipulate you in some way? I mean, does he have temper issues that have maybe at some point gotten out of control? And she said, oh no, that's not the reason. The reason is they think that he doesn't make enough money, and they think that he never will as a youth pastor. She said, I guess I can explain it by our car. It's a 10-year-old Honda that we share. She said, my parents have 7 vehicles, and most of them are new. And they think that there's something wrong with us, and there's something wrong with him because we only have a 10-year-old Honda to share. How many cars would you trade for a man that's going to love and protect and respect your girl for the rest of her life? How many cars would you give? Well, here's another thing, and his point 2 is, why do you need to get over yourself? Money is all from God anyway. Everything that we have, God has given it to us. We don't need to be arrogant. Don't put our hope in wealth. Tell those who are rich in this world not to put their hope in God. To follow His Word, to realize it's God who richly provides everything that we enjoy. Oh, God owns it all. He's just letting you use it. It should make you proud. It should make you humble that He's blessed you the way that He has. I don't know if you recognize some of the boys in the picture here, but this is... anyway, it came out in Forbes magazine in 2012. In the center is Mr. Putin. Robert Kraft, he owns the New England Patriots, and they lost this year, but he's got a bunch of those Super Bowl rings. And it was in 2005. He was asked to go to the Kremlin, and he went to the Kremlin, and he had just won the Super Bowl, and he knew that Mr. Putin was a sports fan, and he kind of showed him his Super Bowl ring. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these rings, but they are a big honking ring. If you ever see one, you won't forget it. Well, he was showing Putin his ring, and he took his ring off and let Mr. Putin hold it. Well, Mr. Putin stuck it on his finger, then he pulled it off his finger and he stuck it in his pocket. And he kept it. And he still got it. And he told the people, the American people, he's got my Super Bowl ring. And they said, well, it's probably better for Russian and American relationships for you to just kind of forget about it, okay? Just forget about it. Well, for 7 years he was silent on the issue, but he finally came out and said, that guy stole my Super Bowl ring. It was mine. And he's got it. And he's wearing it. And I mean, there's other pictures of just him holding it up. What an arrogant, prideful, whatever you want to call him. That's unbelievable. And yet, I wonder if that's not a picture of what we sometimes tend to do when God gives us and entrusts us with things, or lets us use or loans us things on a temporary basis. We start to act like it's ours. Nobody's going to tell me what to do with it. Nobody's going to tell me how to handle it. I made that money and it's mine. 1 Corinthians 4:7 says, What are you so puffed up about? What do you have that God hasn't given you? And if all you have is from God, why act as though you are so great and as though you have accomplished something on your own? You know, you see things through this lens that you have, and I don't know, it should be making us humble when we see how much God has blessed us. It should be making us appreciative and grateful when we see how much God has done for us. But you know, there's people who say, well, Larry, you know, I've worked hard. I've worked a lot of hours to make all this stuff up, you know, so that all this stuff is here. You know, yeah, it's mine. I made the money. It belongs to me. Well, just understand that you made the money on borrowed breathing and borrowed lungs. And, you know, you have a tendency lots of times to overestimate what you have really done and what God has allowed you to do. You underestimate God's ideas and God's part in it all. Did you decide that you would be right-brained or left-brained? Did you decide what town you would live in or what parents would bring you up? Did you decide what hardships that you would have to go through in life when you were young to bring out the strengths that you have that you're now able to use? Did you determine all of those things? Well, look, I feel like I made a lot of money and I'm good with computers. I'm good with technology. Well, you know, what if you weren't born right now, but like 50 years ago? How good would you be? You know, God knows what He's doing. Don't overinflate or overestimate the things that we bring to the table, because you and I, when we're honest, we just don't bring a whole lot to the table. Challenges to move from arrogance to humility, to get rid of this pride thing and the arrogance thing and move to humility. These are some assignments, and I'm going over them kind of quickly. Look for an opportunity to put someone ahead of yourself this week. Go out of this building and say, I'm going to think about how I'm going to consider someone else's words more important than mine. I'm going to listen instead of talk. I'm going to pay attention to other people. I'm going to try to listen. Every day this week, you're going to have opportunities where you can consider someone else more important than you are. So go do that. Go look for an opportunity to put someone ahead of yourself. Here's another one. Give financially in a way that's sacrificial and anonymous. You know, lots of times when I come into church, I mean, I have to admit, one of the things that I do, look over the bulletin, I look at different things, I go, okay, yeah, there's okay, what was the offering last week? Okay, well, I look at the offering. But you know, when you give to this church, we don't publish your name, well, Larry gave blah, blah, blah. You can do it anonymously. It's done anonymously in a way. Do it sacrificially and anonymously when you give. Another thing is repent of your pride and selfishness. I don't mean like in your heart. I mean, that's good. It's a good place to begin. But to say to somebody like, hey, you know what? You already know this, but I want to tell you, I've been acting proud and I've been acting arrogant, and here's how I do it. You know, I tend to be condescending when I talk. I get sarcastic, and I shouldn't. I dismiss what you say, and I'm not listening to you, and that reflects on me. That's not the way I should be. I need to be humble instead of proud. I just hardly ever ask you how you're doing. You always walk up and say, how you doing? What's going on? And I don't hardly ever ask you what's going on in your life, and I'm not that concerned. I need to be concerned. Will you forgive me for that? I'm sorry for being selfish, but it feels like you always want it this way, and I always want it differently. We can do it your way. It's okay. Your way will be okay. Philippians 2 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. Jesus made himself nothing for you and for me. Jesus came from heaven to earth. He sacrificed. He showed us how to live. He set an example for us. He was the King of kings and Lord of lords, and He came in this world and He washed the feet of His disciples. He washed their feet. God, may this church this week take up some of your characteristics as they live. Would y'all stand with me? I'm going to pray.